Yeah, and I suppose at the same time, depending on what the objective is, right? So why am I buying that property? So we hear, Paul, quite a bit in terms of the natural growth and the manufactured growth and the subdivision potential, granny flat. We hear that all the time, right? All this granny flat sort of a flavor. So what are some of the sort of the research from your point of view? I suppose it depends on a council basis, but at a high level, some of the research in terms of development potential.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, I think, from our side, is that I think firstly, the market in general, be it the local government area and then the suburb itself, is probably going to do 60, 70, 80% of the growth in that market. And your particular property is going to do the rest. And then obviously understanding what your objective is for that property is really the main key. And then doing the research to understand if you're buying it for a purpose, can that purpose be fulfilled by doing that research before you actually exchange contracts? So from our side of things, our team, and being really try to be specialists in not just the negotiation but also the refinement of the detail before we get to the point of even bothering putting an offer in on the property, is, for instance, if we're looking at a property that we might want to look at let's say a granny flat, for example. Granny flats in New South Wales and in Sydney in particular get a massive bit of airtime because we are very pro granny flats. However, you go outside of Sydney, you go outside of New South Wales, and people don't talk about granny flats the same way we talk about granny flats. And it's for a few reasons. Firstly, the demand in Sydney is extremely high, or has been extremely high. We've had a huge deficit in supply. So therefore, affordable accommodation, auxiliary dwellings have been quite a useful way for New South Wales and state governments to be able to fulfil that kind of demand there. So it's cheap, it's effective, it's quick. But in other markets, they don't have the same deficit in demand. So we need to understand, well, what is their regulations on granny flats? Queensland's very different to New South Wales. Victoria is more or less impossible. Hobart, Tasmania has different rules, regulations. South Australia, so on and so forth. So I think understanding really what market you're buying in and why you're buying that property. For granny flats as a great example, if you are thinking about it, and I'll give Moreton Bay as an example, because when you look at somewhere that's got potentially the Petrie University, 10,000 students proposed to be there within the next 4 years, you look at it straight away and you assume, well, 10,000 students, great. That means that there's probably going to be an additional influx of desire or need for smaller accommodation for students, be it 1-2 bedroom accommodation. So I think things like townhouses units will probably get a little bit of increased demand. There is a bit of supply coming, so it'll be tapered a bit, but then it's also understanding your regulations. And for instance, understanding your local government area isn't just a blanket rule to say, for instance, New South Wales, minimum 450 square metres. If you've got the access and you can plonk it in a 60 metre squared pad, then you can put it in there more or less. Moreton Bay as an example, and our team's job is to literally understand what is the specifics within that market. So understand, are they pro granny flats? If so, what are the regulations? What are their minimum side access? What is their minimum restrictions at the rear? Understanding that, getting the actual review within the local government area website and actually getting a printout of it to know exactly what this property therefore measures out, using your tools to measure those distances. So know if it's minimum 5 metre access, then actually make sure you've got 5 metre access.